Hello and welcome to The Radical. I'm Christina.
And I'm Nicole. On our podcast, we delve into the roots of metaphysical wisdom.
That's right, Nicole. Our podcast is all about exploring those fundamental truths and practices that nourish your mind, body, and spirit.
Yes, Christina, we want to make metaphysical concepts easy to understand and accessible, especially for those who don't have a ton of time to do all the research.
Right? We'll do the research as well as share our experiences and perspectives, hoping to empower you, our listener, to find balance and magic in your day-to-day.
Inspired by the essence of the word radical, proceeding from the root, let's explore the roots of well-being and self-healing together.
This is The Radical with Christina and Nicole, two metaphysical girls in the material world. Hello, welcome to The Radical. I'm Christina.
And I'm Nicole.
Today we're talking about the planets. We're going to do an introduction to the planets, basic information, not going too deep in the science or the formation, but almost like we're just doing like an introduction of the basic characteristics and a little bit of the history. In the second segment, we're going to discuss additional information and the relationship between the planets and the zodiac, and building up again into understanding our birth charts more. And then our favorite message from the universe. I'm using my Secrets of the Witch's Garden tarot deck today by Sasha Graham, and I've got some cards ready for us.
Yay! I'm excited for our planetary meet and greet. And before we dive into meeting the planets, a quick note on the planets as they pertain to astrology and our birth charts. The planets represent fundamental aspects of our psyche or core aspects of the human personality, while the zodiac signs act as a unique lens or the unique energy that shapes how those planetary influences are then expressed. So I have an example. I chose Neptune, the planet Neptune, in the zodiac sign Capricorn. For our listeners born between November 27th, 1984 and January 28th, 1998, your Neptune is in Capricorn, like mine. Neptune symbolizes our dreams, intuition, imagination, and spiritual ideals. With Neptune in Capricorn, these more ethereal qualities filter through the lens of Capricorn, which is more pragmatic, structured, and disciplined. This combination can manifest as a desire to bring our lofty visions down to earth, creating tangible structures out of that which we dream up or imagine. It's an energy that seeks to merge spiritual or creative ideas with practical long-term goals. And that's sort of what we're doing when we're looking at our birth chart. We're looking at the planets and the zodiac signs. With this combination in particular, Neptune's influence is shaped by Capricorn's characteristics.
You know, what's interesting is the time frame that the planets are in the signs. And from 1984 to 1998. And that's Neptune, which is one of the planets that are the furthest away. I don't fall in that time zone. That time zone. I don't fall in that timeline. I don't know if we have any aspects of our birth charts in common. We'll have to keep searching to see what's further out than that, or maybe by luck something is in the same place. But I'm outside of that range. We don't even have Neptune in common.
I know. I realized that too when I put that little note together. Maybe Pluto. Maybe our
That's
friend
right,
Pluto.
Pluto. And it's funny that we actually don't know, because I don't know where my Pluto is, but maybe we'll discover that together on a podcast.
Yeah.
Starting with Mercury, the closest of the planets to the sun, and that is a terrestrial or rocky planet. It has no moon. It's a light gray color, and it does have the fastest orbit around the sun, 88 days. And all the days and years are all Earth days and years. I'm just going to put that out there.
Yes.
I'm not using any other planet's timeline. So it's all Earth days. 88 days around the sun. And they've discovered that because there's a lot of volatile material discovered on the surface of Mars, that it is thought that on the surface of Mercury, it's thought that Mercury was developing or growing or forming as a planet somewhere else in the solar system, and then got knocked into the current orbit it's in. So it either collided with another object during the formative years of the solar system, or it got bumped over. And as it moved closer to the sun, it stripped off all of its crust and mantle material, which makes Mercury essentially a metal ball. So all it really is why it's so small. It just has all that metal material in it with very, very little rock and essentially no atmosphere. It's just a metal ball rotating around the sun. Like I said, 88 days, very fast. And in astrology, Mercury is in the realm of communication, learning, and thought. Our next planet from the sun is Venus, and that's another terrestrial planet. The 4 inner planets are terrestrial planets. They're primarily rock. And it has no moon. So Venus, the planet of love, beauty, and creativity, is all by itself.
Kind of sad.
Yeah, we just did our podcast on our moon, and I fell in love with our moon all over again, and I was so grateful for it and so happy to see it. Last night I was walking my puppy Michael, and I'm up there staring at the moon, and just so grateful for it. And Venus doesn't have a moon, all alone. Venus is entirely covered with a thick carbon dioxide atmosphere and sulfuric acid clouds, which give it this beautiful light yellow appearance, but makes it the hottest planet in our solar system, because every drop of that sun and heat gets held in by those carbon dioxide clouds. It's essentially a greenhouse effect gone out of control. It is hot. And another interesting thing about Venus, it has an opposite spin of all the other objects. Well, one other object. 2 objects spin the opposite way, and all the other objects in the solar system spin in one direction. And that is probably due to a collision, again, during the formative years of the solar system. Oh, and it is very, very, very slow. The slowest rotation. That a day is longer than a solar year on Venus.
Wow.
That's how slow it's rotating.
Wow. That is super slow.
Right? And I'm sure that has something to do with why the heat gets stuck in there too. It's fascinating. Go look it up, listeners, if you're interested in that. It's fascinating. The planet of love, beauty, and creativity, it orbits around the sun in 225 days. So it's very close to the Earth. Next, our third rock from the sun is our Earth, a terrestrial planet, one beautiful special moon. We're blue from the color of our water and the reflection of the water. And our life-giving force in the solar system is the sun. The sun's heat drives our weather patterns, our stable seasons, our atmosphere, and our magnetic field protects us from the solar winds. And we have a 265-day orbit. Is that right? 265 days in a year?
365.
I was writing it next to Venus, and I was just like, yeah, we're so similar. 365 days in a year. That's how fast we go around the sun. The next planet is Mars, a terrestrial planet. It's got 2 moons. Interesting thing about moons, the closer you are to the sun, the harder it is for the planet to hold its own moon. So Mercury, no moon, Venus, no moon, Earth has one, Mars has two. And then as we get further out, the planets have more and more moons. Because the gravity is, well, their gravity holds the moons in easier without the competition from the sun's gravity. Mars, terrestrial planet, it is that red color because of ferric oxide. It's basically a rusty iron, gives its sandy soil that distinctive red color. And it has iron-rich minerals on the surface. So Mars is essentially covered by rust, CO2 atmosphere, water frozen at the polar caps, and it doesn't have a magnetic field, or it has a very, very, very small magnetic field, so that the solar winds have stripped off most of its atmosphere. And Mars doesn't have internal heat to have the molten metals to create the magnetic field, because what they're figuring in the creation of Mars was that at one point in its history, it had a very turbulent volcanic period of time, and basically everything was happening all at once. All the volcanoes were happening, the planet got super hot, it caused all of its water to condense in one place, and then it cooled very quickly and was too close to the sun, lost its atmosphere, and all that water just went off into the universe. It just floated away. And that's because Mars is about half the size of Earth, so it was too small. It cooled off too quickly. 687 days around the sun are Mars. And it is a planet of action, aggression, and drive. So you just think of that crazy turbulent past that it had, that it got hot too fast and then cooled too fast. Very aggressive.
And the red color too. I think that helps remind us of that aggression.
Right. Well, I believe they saw the red color to it and they were like, it was covered in blood. So it was given to the planet of war, if I remember correctly.
That sounds about right.
Yes. Floating away past the asteroid belt and some of our other celestial bodies that we're going to cover in another podcast is Jupiter. Oh, our gas giant. And Jupiter has the fastest rotation, 11 hours. It is just spinning out there in the solar system.
Whipping around.
The outer atmosphere is mostly hydrogen and helium with small amounts of water droplets, ice crystals, ammonia, and lots of other elements that give it the colors. The colors are interacting with the sun's light, causing different reactions. That's why we get these beautiful shades of white, orange, brown, and red. That big red spot that Jupiter has is a huge storm that's really high up in its clouds. That's why it's darker red. It's actually interacting with the sunlights more because it's higher up in its atmosphere. When Jupiter was forming as a planet, it was basically this huge ball just kind of careening from the outer limits of the solar system, being pulled in by the sun into the inner part of the solar system. And it was just barreling through there, just knocking stuff around, sucking up matter, tossing matter away. And essentially it was coming closer to the sun. But do you know what stopped it?
What?
Saturn.
Oh.
Saturn and Jupiter were moving along and they got caught in each other's gravity along with the sun's gravity, and then they kind of entered a dance, which kind of held Jupiter in its place so that it didn't continue on its journey towards the sun. And if it did, there would be no Earth. There probably wouldn't be a lot going on. Jupiter would have just came in and just knocked it all over the place. So thank you, Saturn, for stabilizing that giant. And it continues to protect us. It continues to absorb asteroids. It has a huge gravity field. It has a huge radiation belt. It has a huge magnetic field that is beneficial for us, but also causes every now and then a little bit of havoc. That its gravity is so massive that it does interact with the sun. The sun is always pulled a little bit towards Jupiter as Jupiter is rotating around the sun. And they're saying that its effect on Mercury can cause Mercury either to be pushed into the sun or pulled completely out of orbit and off into space.
Poor
So
Mercury.
Jupiter, yeah, I know, right? So Jupiter is our friend, and also just kind of like I compared it sometimes to a parent, where it'll sometimes give you what you want, but not in the method that you asked for.
Mm-hmm.
It has 4 rings. We don't see them as well as the rings of the other planets because they're not made of ice. They're made of other materials. It has 95 known moons. 72 of them have permanent designations, and 57 have names.
Wow.
11 plus years to orbit. So just about 12, if you round up, 12 years to orbit Jupiter. And it is expansion, growth, and luck. Saturn is next, another gas giant. It has a pale yellow hue due to ammonia crystals in its upper atmosphere. Through the heat created from extreme pressure from clouds, it causes elements to rip apart. And this is where the diamond rain comes from. Did I tell you about that? That extreme pressure pushing down, changing the elemental nature of the elements causes carbon to crystallize and be rain, and it rains down, but then it turns into, and then by the time it hits the surface, it actually dissolves into something else. It's quite fascinating to think about the pressure and how we have water that does that and exists in ice and liquid and gas in the earth. Well, carbon does that on the other planets. They have diamond crystals. It's amazing to think about how the planets are so different. And hydrogen under extreme pressure can act like a metal and conduct energy, and it can also liquefy. And that's what causes the strong magnetic fields of the larger gas giants, because they don't have a large metal core like some of the terrestrial planets. And then we can't talk about Saturn without talking about its rings. 33 rings plus their subclasses. And it's this bright white color because it's mostly ice. What they think happened is that a huge ice moon got too close to Saturn and then got ripped apart by Saturn's gravity and then entered into orbit. And this is a fun thing, because of the way that Saturn rotates on its own axis. It's going to be pivoting in a way that the rings are going to be invisible to Earthlings in the year 2025.
I did see something about that. I think because we talked about it, Instagram was like, here's a picture of that
Oh,
for
yes.
you.
It's going to go on edge, so we won't see them. They'll still be there. It has 146 moons, 63 are named, and it takes 29 years for Saturn to orbit the sun. And Saturn is a planet of self discipline and responsibility. So if Jupiter is like a parent or a benevolent, loving, kind of jovial, for lack of a
Maybe it's
better
like
word.
the grandparent.
Yes, yes. Saturn is like your kindergarten teacher or your college professor or your drill sergeant that begins to teach you, teach you lessons in a more defined and rigid way. That's kind of how I see Saturn. Self-discipline and responsibility. Uranus, ice giant, as a cyan color due to methane. It's a pale blue. And Uranus is thought to have suffered a major collision, which gave it a very unique tilt. It's basically on its side, and a very unique rotation because it also has an opposite spin, just like Venus. It also may have caused the planet to lose some of its heat source in this collision. So Uranus is the coldest planet. Coldest. There's no heat or very, very minimal heat generated internally to drive large storm clouds. And it has a very smooth, featureless surface. But as we're getting probes closer, we're actually starting to see some weather patterns and some heat, because it does absorb some heat from the sun, just not as much as the other planets. It has 28 known moons, and some of them are made, almost half of them are ice, just icy cold out there. And it
Wow.
has 13 rings. You'll see Uranus with its 13 rings. And they also have shepherd moons within the rings that are kind of clearing the space. If you imagine Jupiter did that to the solar system, kind of cleared space by vacuuming up all the debris, they can see that there's larger pieces of material inside the rings of Uranus that are kind of like creating patterns.
It's so
Pulling
cool.
things in and pushing things out. And Uranus, 84 years to orbit the sun, and it is the planet of liberation, innovation, and rebellion. And that's not hard to see if you consider how Uranus kind of was knocked over on its side and is rotating in its own way, doing its own thing. I like that
Yeah,
thought in my head.
I like that. That's helpful.
Neptune is an ice giant, and Neptune is essentially made of the same stuff as Uranus, but Neptune did not suffer some major collisions. Neptune is rotating the way of the sun and the majority of the planets, but it also has a lot of heat to it still. Although it cannot be seen with the naked eye, the methane in Neptune's upper atmosphere absorbs the red light from the sun and reflects the blue light from the sun back into space. That's why it appears this bright azure blue. On Neptune, it does have its own magnetic field because it does have some internal heat due to the pressure and due to the liquid hydrogen, as we said, acting like a metal. But it has the fastest winds in the solar system. The winds are whipping around on that planet so fast because there's no features like mountains or anything or craters that we can see on the planet to slow it down. And also because it's so cold. You know how gases and materials act differently when they're cold?
Mm-hmm.
The atmosphere, the hydrogen are more viscous. It actually is propelling the winds even faster on Neptune.
Wow.
And it has a huge black spot, just like how Jupiter has a red spot. It has a black spot that's like the size of the Earth that is just flying around that planet, just whipping around. And Neptune has 6 faint rings, 16 known moons, and one of Neptune's moons, Triton, is as big as Pluto. So you wonder if Triton hadn't gotten so close, it would be its own
Yeah.
planet out there. It takes 164 years for Neptune to orbit. We are so far out there. We're so far away. And Neptune is the planet of dreams, illusion, and spirituality. If you think about why Neptune, when it's further away from Uranus, but still has its own heat, it still has its own weather systems, it still has its own story to tell, you can kind of see, and that beautiful color, you can kind of see how it captures the imagination of the dream world and the illusions. And then Pluto, our 9th planet, even though it's not considered a planet, it's a dwarf planet. But Pluto is so steeped in astrology and so steeped in this culture that I'm just counting it as number 9. And the reason why it was downgraded in 2006, because it doesn't meet the third criteria out of the 3. The first one is it orbits around the sun. 2, it has sufficient mass to assume hydrostatic equilibrium, so it's a round shape. And then 3, what they say Pluto hasn't done is it hasn't cleared its neighborhood around its orbit. Essentially, the planets are so large that they can either pull in or push out other things that are in their orbit, and there's just too much matter around Pluto, so it was downgraded. But It's still a huge planet out there, a huge dwarf planet. It's an icy rock. We've got new images that were just come in with the features and the colors that we can see on Pluto. There's a reddish color, which is usually caused by methane mixing with ice crystals. It has 5 moons. The largest moon, Charon, 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 is about
Is
half
it
the size of
Chiron?
Pluto. No, it's
Oh.
Charon.
Oh.
Charon. It's
Okay.
about half the size of Pluto. So they have the biggest planet to moon size, second
Yeah.
to Earth. Like our moon is very big compared to us, and it
Yeah.
takes 248 years for that lonely icy planet to rotate around the earth, the earth, to rotate around the sun. And that is a generational thing right there. We have to check
Mhm.
our Pluto placement in our birth charts. And it is the planet of regeneration, transformation, power dynamics, psychological processes. And I see it as sort of like us growing together as a collective in our knowledge and what we know and what we don't know, what we find out about Pluto. It also represents a little bit of that to me, but also deep transformation. And Pluto is not as cold as Uranus, which is significantly closer. It does have its own heat source and it absorbs just a little bit from the sun, but it still has its own heat source going on. It has stuff happening, and they can tell that by looking at the patterns of the rocks and the uh, ice, for lack of a better word, on its surface. That it has heated and cooled in certain geometric patterns that they know that there's activity on it.
It's so cool that we can collect that type of
Yes.
information.
Mm-hmm. And they have all the information on the open source that you can go out there and look up all the latest probes and satellites and Voyagers and all the Cassinis and all these fantastic human ventures out into space. And you could get lost in a rabbit hole for hours looking at everything that they've discovered about these 9 planets. So that's the big 9. Meet and greet of the big 9 planets. And I am counting Pluto as one of the 9.
I mentioned it to you when we were preparing, but do you remember the mnemonic device? My very excellent mother just served us 9 pizzas. That's how you remembered the planet. So we need Pluto as the
Oh,
9th planet. Otherwise, there wouldn't be
yes.
9 pizzas.
We need those 9 pizzas. Oh,
Yes.
I love that. I knew there was one, but I didn't remember it. I'm glad that you remembered it because I know all of us at some point in our education have learned a mnemonic device on how to remember
Yes.
them.
I have fond memories of the magic school bus as well. The magical
Oh,
school bus
yes.
that took the kids on a field trip through the solar system and
I love learning about the 9 planets. And from what I learned in school to what is available now is just leaps
Oh,
and bounds. I
yes.
was in a rabbit hole on each one of the planets. It was fascinating. I love this stuff. And as we said, I feel like I understand the planets better and then I tie in what the characteristics are to them and they become personalities. They become entities more than just, this flat one-dimensional object. They have form and features and characteristics to me now.
Yes, which is exactly what we wanted to achieve in this first segment. Like we said at the beginning, the planets represent the core aspects of the human personality. So, by covering the characteristics, and those can stick in your mind, hopefully, a little bit better as it pertains to the planetary positions in your own birth chart. Planets could be retrograde when you were born. So, if you generate your birth chart, you may notice a notation that a planet was in retrograde at the time and place of your birth. A planet is in retrograde when a planet appears to move backwards in the sky from our perspective on Earth. This is just an optical illusion. The planet's not actually traveling backwards, it's just how it appears from our vantage point. When a planet is in retrograde in your chart, or anytime really, it is said that the planet's energy and the areas of life that it rules will be more inwardly focused. Retrogrades are thought to symbolize a time of review, reflection, reassessing, reconsidering, and or reworking different things in the area of life that the particular planet that is in retrograde rules.
Do you know why sometimes it looks like that? One of the reasons why is that not all the planets are rotating on the same plane.
Mm-hmm.
That it's not this flat. It's not like the rings of Saturn and the planets are going around all the same. Some of them are inclined and declined and elliptical, and they're not even perfectly round.
Yeah, they're not like on a hula hoop.
Yeah, yeah, like a flat plane. It's fascinating. They have models of what they think is more accurately representing the orbits of the planets, and it is fascinating to look at.
There is a concept called planetary dignity, and this further helps explain how planets express their energies. The first type of planetary dignity is the domicile or rulership. When a planet is in its home sign, this is called domicile, and this is where a planet functions most naturally and powerfully. The opposite of domicile also starts with the letter D, is the detriment. This is when a planet is in the sign opposite of the domicile or rulership. When a planet is in the detriment, it feels really challenged. It feels out of place. An example here in our last podcast about Scorpio, we learned that Scorpio's domicile or ruling planet is Pluto. So Pluto is at home in Scorpio. The zodiac sign opposite Scorpio on the astrological wheel is Taurus. So Pluto in Taurus is at its detriment. And it sounds bad or scary, but it's not. It is just a way for us to become more aware of potential challenges or learning opportunities. So we could ask ourselves questions like the following as sort of a self inquiry. You could ask yourself, am I resisting the energy of this planet out of fear or frustration? Am I avoiding growth, or where am I avoiding growth because the path feels challenging or unfamiliar? How can I work with this placement to develop resilience and adaptability? There's
I love
two
that.
more,
Opportunities.
right? I know. It is definitely one of those cliches that makes me roll my eyes a little bit for sure, where it's like, don't tell me it's an opportunity when I know
Opportunity for
something's going to be
growth.
hard. Yeah. Two more planetary dignities that are also in relationship with each other. A planet is considered exalted, where it is believed to function at its best. So this is different from domicile. When a planet is exalted, the vibe is more like the energies are being celebrated, honored, or enhanced. The planet's influence is considered very potent, positive, and harmonious. The fall is when a planet is in the sign opposite exaltation. This is where it operates with less ease or it struggles to express its qualities. A good example here, the moon's domicile is Cancer, but the moon is exalted in Taurus. The moon's fall is Scorpio, and its detriment is Capricorn. When you have a placement that is in a fall, you could ask yourself, am I overly critical or harsh with myself in this area of life? Do I experience self-doubt or insecurity in relation to the themes associated with this particular planet? And how can I balance my aspirations with the realities of my limitations? What steps can I take to work through these challenges? Christina mentioned earlier sort of the distinction between the inner and outer planets. The inner planets are Mercury, Venus, and Mars. They have a shorter orbit around the sun, so they move through the zodiac signs quicker. Their influence is more personal and day to day. The outer planets of Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune move through the zodiac signs at a much slower pace, therefore
And Pluto.
spending. Oh, he's
I'm
on
joking.
there. Did I say him? Did I
No.
skip him? He's written down. How
And
dare
Pluto.
me? Wow.
I think
Apologies, Pluto.
I'm following your notes, and if you said it, I think that you might have left it off. So I was like, I have to chime in.
Well, certainly we're including Pluto here. So, outer planets Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto move through the zodiac signs at a slower pace, spending more time in each sign because of their longer orbits. The influence is therefore said to be more collective or generational. They could be societal trends that get influenced by the longer orbits as well. The themes tend to be broader over an extended or longer period of time. Another distinction, the traditional planets and the quote unquote new planets. The traditional planets have been known and visible since antiquity. Those traditional planets are Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn. They were visible to the naked eye. They were the only planets that could be observed and studied without a telescope. Uranus is our first new planet, discovered in 1781. Astrology has been around for thousands of years at this point. And astrology, up until the new planets were discovered, were based on the traditional, essentially 5 planets. So as we start incorporating the new planets, they further shape astrology and our interpretations and kind of shift how astrology is used in a way. We start to differentiate more so between the inner and outer planets and the planets that affect more so the individual versus the collective. In 1781, when Uranus was discovered, there was kind of a lot going on. We're in the middle of the Enlightenment period, which stretches from 1685 to 1851. We have the American Revolution in 1776, the Industrial Revolution, which starts in 1760. The French Revolution comes a little bit after Uranus's discovery. The French Revolution is in 1789. But what these events in history tell us is that there was a lot of discovery in the areas of technology and science, and more emphasis on individuality during this time. So Uranus has come to symbolize the capacity for radical transformation, disrupting the status quo, progressive movements, originality, and breakthroughs in human thought. And we see that in astrology today, with Uranus representing innovation, rebellion, and liberation, like Christina mentioned before. Neptune was discovered in 1846. There was the Romanticism movement going on during the 1800s. This was an artistic movement. We saw spirituality spread more so during the 1800s. Also, the ideologies of socialism and communism. Romanticism in the arts was all about how our senses, our emotions, not just reason and order, but also sense and emotion give us meaning and understanding when we're experiencing the world. So we see that notion in the art from the Romanticism period. And that's where Neptune got a lot of its qualities in symbolism that include mysticism, imagination, dreams, creativity. So we see that embodied sort of in the personality of Neptune, like Christina said.
Mm-hmm.
You said something the other day, Christina, and it was so good. It's this idea that the planets sort of became visible at the right time for us humans in our evolution and our consciousness.
To be ready for what lessons those planets would represent.
Yes.
Right? And I'm sure I
Yes.
read that somewhere and then just kind of mashed it up in my brain and then remembered to say it. But that's true. It's just like the imagery that we have on Pluto is that it was so mysterious for so long, but now that we have evolved with the understanding with the technology, we're ready to understand what Pluto means to us.
Yes.
What lessons we can learn from that planet. Yeah.
Yes. Pluto's a really good example of this idea. So Pluto was discovered in 1930 in the United States. We're in the middle of the Great Depression.
Mm.
On the world stage, we are in between World War I and World War II. We see the rise of totalitarian regimes, nuclear technology. So that symbolism for Pluto of humanity grappling with our darkest instincts, destruction, the cycles of renewal and transformation, the cycles of death and rebirth. We really saw that in what was going on with, what was going on in the world. But
Mm-hmm.
this idea that the planets became visible to us when we were ready for their lessons. Pluto is also deep psychological processes. And this
Mm-hmm.
is also around the time when modern psychology was starting to really grow. I believe this is around the time Carl Jung was doing a lot of his work. So, as a collective, we got more into these deeper psychological ideas and studying them. And then, just like that, we're also able to observe Pluto. I have just a little bit left to go. This is a current event. So this is happening right now. As you may remember, the zodiac wheel is 360 degrees divided into 12 sections, one section for each of the 12 zodiac signs. Dividing the wheel into 12 sections creates 12 equal sections that are 30 degrees each. Pluto is currently in Capricorn, and it will stay there until November 19th of this year, 2024, and then it's going to move into Aquarius. As you guys know, Pluto's orbit is quite long, so it will stay in Aquarius until March 2043. So about 20 years. Not only is Pluto in Capricorn, but it is also in the 29th degree, which is called the anaretic degree. It's that final degree, the 29th degree of the 30 total degrees. And when a planet is in the anaretic degree, this is called, I've heard it called like the crisis degree.
No.
I know. It sounds intense. And when we're looking at Pluto in the anaretic degree of Capricorn, this can mean the sort of dismantling of top-down structures. So big entities like governments or corporations. The reason for this dismantling is the collective is starting to demand more transparency, honesty, truth, and accountability. So this anaretic degree that we're going to be in until November 19th, that is right in line with the US presidential election. The astrology is suggesting sort of a tumultuous time where we could see old ways in terms of governments and corporations being broken down. Stay grounded, breathe, practice your self-care.
Love that. Stay grounded and breathe.
Yes.
Sometimes that's all you can do. Oh, I love that. Right into our message from the universe. We're going to keep all this woo-woo vibe going here. I've got The Secret of the Witch's Garden by Sasha Graham. Card A or card B? You guys choose. Okay. Card A is the Ace of Cups. Compassion and flow. It is the root of the power of water, which, as we know, is emotions. A witching hand holds an overflowing chalice. It is emotions cup. The chalice is engraved with a lunar symbol reflecting shifting emotions and transient energies. The moon marks the changeability of temperament. Each tear shed in happiness, every heart-wrenched cry, and all feelings in between spill from the cup in humanity's magical elixir. A raven descends upon the cup like an angel touching ground for the first time. It carries the gift of a pentacle. The offering is a reminder of real things unfolding in life due to emotional solvency. The raven reflects the shapeshifter within. It carries the shadow side of emotion and challenging feelings to be integrated rather than repressed. This action guarantees flow. The secret of the Ace of Cups is how emotional vibration attracts like-minded energy. Like attracts like. This is why dark and sticky emotions that are integrated do not attract more of the same. Dragonflies and fish are drawn to the cup like moths to a flame. Spontaneous intensity attracts and amplifies energy. Lotus flower petals are open and receptive. The sacred lotus roots deep into the subterranean mud, silt, and sand, while the flower opens to sunlight and inspiration from above. The Ace of Cups is the seed of all card cups. It pours forth the story of the heart, time and again. The upright meaning of the Ace of Cups is an open heart with emotions flowing, unbounded love, beautiful beginning of affection, a fresh, artful approach to life, splendid feelings, new opportunity in all emotional sectors, and heart opening. If you are feeling resistant to this card or its message, the question to ask yourself is, how can I heal? Okay, card B. Three of Pentacles. Collaboration. This is Mars in Capricorn. An artisan witch works diligently at a trellis with the triad of pentacles embedded at the top. An intellectual groundhog and a fairy flower spirit look on as the three work together. Moonflowers invoke the invisible essence of garden magic. Tools, paints, and creative objects are scattered about. The artisan witch tucks a flower in her hair and special violets into her back pocket. The Three of Pentacles is collaboration leading to manifestation. Everything in life is a give and take energetic exchange. Gathering talents and abilities makes for unique projects and new friendships and alliances. The secret of this card is a reference to Freemasonry in the connection of the artist's bench, apron, and tool. It speaks to the ancient secret society who recognize that the life we build around ourselves reflects the inner temple of the soul. Honor the works that we want to be born inside your hands. Ask for help when you need it. And collaborate with those who share talents and inspiration freely. You are building something beautiful, upright, working well with others, calling in the experts, renovation of house and home, building something for yourself, a project bears fruit, and craftsmanship and collaboration. If you are feeling resistant to this card, ask yourself the question, how can I collaborate kindly? Thank you, universe.
Thank you, universe. And thank you, Christina. I always love hearing what messages the universe has for us.
Always timely. And sometimes we don't fully understand why we need that card until later in the day. Sometimes the next day, sometimes the next week. But there's always a message there for us. Thank you for joining us today, listeners. We had so much fun with the planets.
Thank you, listeners.
Thank you, everyone. Stay safe, take care, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you for listening to this episode of The Radical. The Radical is written and produced by Nicole and Christina.
Listener questions can be emailed to us at theradicalpodnc@gmail.com.
Our Instagram is The Radical Pod.
Music by Van Horton. His Instagram is Van Horton Music.